The text arrived at 2:47 a.m. A notification from my bank about unusual activity. Half asleep, I almost ignored it, but something made me check. $4 million had just been transferred into my account. My heart stopped. "Don't worry about it, babe. Go back to sleep," James mumbled beside me, rolling over. That's when I knew he had finally done it. After months of suspicious behavior and cryptic phone calls, my husband had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. My name is Alexandra Weber, and at 34, I discovered my husband of 8 years had been using my identity to embezzle millions from his company. But let me back up and explain how we got here. I met James at a charity gala in Manhattan. He was charming, successful, and seemed to have everything figured out. As CFO of a major tech company, he lived the kind of life most people only dreamed about. Designer suits, luxury cars, vacation homes, the works. I was just starting my career as a forensic accountant, ironically enough. The fact that I specialized in investigating financial crimes would come back to haunt him later. We got married after a whirlwind romance. The first few years were like a fairy tale. James showered me with gifts, took me on exotic trips, and made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. But there were red flags I chose to ignore. The way he dodged questions about work, the mysterious late-night phone calls, the growing pile of paperwork he'd hide whenever I entered his home office. "It's just boring business stuff," he'd say with that disarming smile. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart." I wanted to believe him, but my training made it impossible to overlook the signs. The irregular deposits into our joint account, the shell companies being created under variations of my name, the forged signatures on documents I never saw. Then came the night everything changed. I was working late at my office, reviewing case files, when my colleague Sarah rushed in. "Alex, you need to see this," she said, placing a stack of papers on my desk. "These just came across my desk. Someone's been moving huge sums of money through a series of shell corporations. The paperwork, it all leads back to you." My blood ran cold as I scanned the documents. My signature was everywhere, authorizing transfers, opening accounts, signing off on deals I'd never heard of. Except it wasn't my signature, it was an incredibly good forgery. "This can't be right," I whispered, but I knew it was. James had been using my identity, my credentials, my reputation to steal millions. He'd made me an unwitting accomplice to his crimes. That night, I lay awake beside him, my mind racing. The man I loved, the life we built together, it was all based on lies. But I couldn't confront him, not yet. I needed proof, needed to understand the full scope of what he'd done. Over the next few weeks, I started dating. Every night after James fell asleep, I'd carefully go through his office, photographing documents, downloading files, tracking the money trail. What I uncovered was staggering. James hadn't just stolen from his company. He created an elaborate network of fake businesses and accounts, all using variations of my name and identity. The more I discovered, the angrier I became. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage, he put everything I'd worked for at risk. My career, my reputation, my future, all of it could be destroyed if his scheme was discovered, and he'd done it without a second thought. I knew I had to act, but I needed to be smart about it. One wrong move and James would realize I was onto him. So I played the perfect wife, smiling and nodding as he bragged about his latest business deals, all while building my case. I contacted the FBI, sharing everything I'd uncovered. Agent Thompson, the lead investigator, was impressed by the detailed evidence I gathered. "This is thorough work, Mrs. Weber," he said during our first meeting. "But you understand what this means? Your husband could face serious prison time." I nodded, my voice steady. "I understand completely. He made his choice when he decided to drag me into this. The plan was simple. Let James think he'd gotten away with it while the FBI built their case. I had to keep playing my part, pretending I didn't know anything was wrong. It wasn't easy, especially when James started getting bolder with his schemes. "Remember those papers I had you sign last month?" he asked one evening over dinner. "Well, they just helped us secure a very comfortable future." I forced a smile, my stomach churning. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm glad I could help." He grinned, raising his wine glass. "To us, babe. We're set for life now." If only he knew what was coming. The next few months were a delicate balance. During the day, I helped the FBI track every dollar James had stolen. At night, I played the role of the supportive wife, watching as he dug himself deeper into his web of lies. Then came the text about the $4 million transfer. James had finally made his big move, thinking he'd secured our comfortable future. Little did he know, he just signed his own arrest warrant. I lay there in bed, my heart pounding as I thought about what would happen next. The FBI had everything they needed now. In a few hours, they would move in, and James's carefully constructed world would come crashing down. "Everything okay?" he mumbled, pulling me closer. "Everything's perfect," I whispered back, knowing it would be the last night we'd spend together. The sun was barely rising when I heard the first knock at our door. The morning James was arrested felt surreal. I watched from our bedroom window as FBI agents led him out in handcuffs, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. He kept looking back at the house, probably wondering why I wasn't rushing to his defense. The moment our eyes met, realization dawned on his face. "You?" he mouthed, his expression morphing from confusion to rage. "You did this?" I held his gaze, not flinching. For the first time since discovering his crimes, I felt truly in control. The aftermath was chaos. News of James' arrest spread quickly through financial circles. Headlines screamed about the multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme, and suddenly our lives were under a microscope. Reporters camped outside our house, hoping to catch a glimpse of the betrayed wife who had helped bring down her criminal husband. What they didn't know was that I was already steps ahead. In the months leading up to James' arrest, I had quietly prepared for the fallout. I had documented everything, protecting myself from any implications in his crimes. My own finances were secure, separated from his illegal activities. I had even started looking for a new place to live, knowing our mansion would likely be seized as evidence. The first visitor I received after James' arrest wasn't a reporter or a lawyer. It was his mother, Eleanor. She stormed into my office at work, her designer handbag swinging wildly as she confronted me. "How could you do this to him?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "He gave you everything. A beautiful home, expensive gifts, the life most women only dream of." I looked up from my computer, keeping my voice steady. "He gave me stolen money, Eleanor. He used my identity to commit crimes. He risked everything I've worked for without a second thought. He did it for us," she insisted, "for our family, and you betrayed him." "No," I said firmly, standing up. "He betrayed me the moment he decided to forge my signature. He betrayed me when he made me an unwitting accomplice to his crimes. And now he's facing the consequences of his actions." She left in tears, but her words stayed with me. How many other people would see me as the villain in this story? How many would assume I should have stayed quiet, looked the other way, been grateful for the luxury his crimes had provided? The answer came sooner than I expected. That evening, I received a call from James's lawyer. They wanted to make a deal. "Mrs. Weber," the lawyer said, his tone carefully neutral, "my client is willing to take full responsibility for the embezzlement charges if you agree to certain terms." "What terms?" I asked, though I already knew what was coming. "You would need to sign an affidavit stating you had no knowledge of his activities. In return, he'll ensure you keep certain assets, the house, the cars, a generous monthly allowance." I couldn't help but laugh. Even now, James thought he could buy my silence, control the narrative. "Tell your client no deal," I said firmly. "I've spent months documenting his crimes. I'm not going to lie to protect him." The lawyer sighed. "Mrs. Weber, please understand. If you cooperate, this could all go away quietly. You could maintain your lifestyle, your social standing. Fighting this will only make things messier. Messier than having my identity stolen. Than being made an unwitting accomplice to fraud. No thank you. I'll take my chances with the truth." After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The red flags I'd ignored, the signs I'd dismissed, the gut feelings I pushed aside. Never again would I silence my instincts for the sake of keeping peace. The preliminary hearing was set for a month after James' arrest. I arrived at the courthouse early, dressed in a simple black suit, my head held high. The media frenzy had died down somewhat, but there were still photographers waiting outside, eager to capture my expression as I walked in. James was already there when I entered the courtroom, sitting between his lawyers in an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his expensive suits and confident smirk. When he saw me, his face hardened into a mask of hatred. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Bank records, forged documents, witness testimonies. It all painted a clear picture of his crimes. But what really sealed his fate was my testimony. I spoke for over 2 hours, detailing everything I had discovered. The forged signatures, the shell companies, the elaborate network of fraud he had built using my identity. With each word, I could see James's composure cracking. Finally, he snapped. "She's lying," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "She knew everything. She benefited from all of it." The judge ordered him to sit down, but the damage was done. His outburst only confirmed what the evidence already showed. He was guilty, and he was desperate. The judge's decision was swift. James would be held without bail until his trial, deemed a flight risk due to the extensive financial resources he had hidden away. As they led him out of the courtroom, he tried one last time to catch my eye, but I refused to look at him. That chapter of my life was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around me, shouting questions. "Mrs. Weber, how does it feel to bring down your own husband? Did you suspect anything before discovering the fraud? What made you decide to go to the FBI?" I paused on the courthouse steps, thinking carefully about my response. Finally, I turned to face the cameras. "I did what any honest person would do," I said clearly. "I chose truth over comfort, integrity over luxury. My husband didn't just steal money. He stole my identity, my trust, and my reputation. But he couldn't steal my principles." The following weeks were a blur of legal meetings and court appearances. James's empire was slowly dismantled, his hidden accounts uncovered, his stolen millions traced and seized. Through it all, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved out of our mansion into a modest apartment, something I could afford on my own salary. I threw myself into my work, using my experience to help other victims of financial fraud. Slowly but surely, I reclaimed my identity, not as James Weber's wife, but as Alexandra Weber, forensic accountant and fraud investigator. 6 months after James's arrest, I received a letter from him in prison. His handwriting was shaky, different from the confident scrawl I remembered. "Alex," it began, "I know you probably hate me, but please try to understand. Everything I did for us. We could have had it all. The perfect life, no financial worries, everything we ever dreamed of. Why couldn't you just look the other way?" I read the letter twice, then carefully fed it through my paper shredder. He still didn't get it. To him, a perfect life meant luxury at any cost. He couldn't understand that I'd rather live honestly in a small apartment than luxuriously on stolen money. A year after James' arrest, I sat in another courtroom, watching as he was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He had finally pleaded guilty, faced with overwhelming evidence and no hope of acquittal. As the judge read out his sentence, I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just relief that it was finally over. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor was waiting for me. Her face was lined with grief, but there was something else in her expression, understanding, maybe even respect. "I was wrong about you," she said quietly. "I thought you were being selfish, but you were just being honest. James, he made his own choices." I nodded, accepting her words but not meeting them. I had made peace with my decisions long ago. Today, 2 years after James's arrest, my life looks very different. I've built a successful practice specializing in helping victims of financial fraud. I teach seminars on identity theft protection, sharing my story as a warning to others. And most importantly, I've learned to trust my instincts again. Sometimes, late at night, I think about James sitting in his prison cell, probably still believing I betrayed him. He'll never understand that his real betrayal wasn't stealing the money. It was stealing my trust, my identity, my right to choose my own path. But that's okay. I don't need him to understand. I know who I am now, and that's something no one can steal from me again.